In the 6 documentary films we made on Lehi's trail, we showed compelling evidence that the Book of Mormon is a true history and that Lehi took the frankincense trail across Arabia. It is gratifying to see now that most Book of Mormon scholars accept my model of Lehi's passage through Arabia. It would have been a journey that took Lehi into contact with the wealthy townspeople along the trail. In this video, we'll explore the theory that Lehi made a tremendous impact on the people in Arabia.
It's important to understand that Lehi was no ordinary man. In the ancient world, he would have represented a force to be reckoned with, and for this reason, when he challenged the leaders in Jerusalem, they sought to kill him. Had he been a commoner, no one would have felt threatened by Lehi's message. But given Lehi's stature in the community, the rulers of Judah considered him a real threat, and thus they needed to eliminate him quickly. When Lehi spoke, people listened. We know this for the following reasons. First and foremost, Lehi was a prophet, a status that was highly esteemed in both ancient Palestine and Arabia. Second, Lehi appears to have been a tribal sheikh or leader. The Book of Mormon makes reference to his people, that is, Lehi's people, implying that he was responsible for a community or tribe of people. Third, Lehi was a landowner, having inherited the land. In antiquity, owning land was a privilege that was usually reserved only for the noble class. Nephi confirms this elevated status of his family when he promises Zoram that if he came with them, he could be a free man like unto us. Fourth, Lehi had great wealth and owned many precious things. Finally, and most revealing of all, Lehi and his sons were highly educated for that era. They could speak and write in at least 2 languages, and probably more. In antiquity, few people could read even their own languages. Schools didn't exist at that time, and only the wealthiest of households could afford to have a learned man tutor their children. With this in mind, think of Lehi's small caravan approaching one of the towns along the incense trail. Certainly news of a noble man and prophet arriving from the north would have preceded Lehi's approach to the city. Undoubtedly, the prophet Lehi would have been an honored guest in the courts of the most important emirs. On the one hand, the Book of Mormon doesn't mention Lehi visiting people as he passed through the wilderness. The most likely reason is that the purpose of the Book of Mormon was only to record the things of God, not to record social matters. Furthermore, most ancient records seldom included encounters with other people. It simply was not the literary form of that time. For example, Abraham must have visited numerous towns and villages during his years of wandering. However, only a handful are mentioned. Elijah traveled from Jericho to Mount Sinai. Certainly he passed through towns and villages along the trail. None are mentioned, though, in the 2nd Book of Kings. On the other hand, there are many reasons why one should assume that Lehi visited with the people along the frankincense trail. Firstly, and most importantly, the Doctrines and Covenants said they did. We read in D&C 33 of the Lord calling forth missionaries in the latter day and exhorting them to be like the great missionary Nephi. We read in verse 8, "Open your mouths, and they shall be filled, and you shall become even as Nephi of old, who journeyed from Jerusalem in the wilderness." Indeed, Nephi must have been a very prolific missionary as he traveled in Arabia, where the Lord would not have stood him up as an example to missionaries in our day. And if he was such a great missionary, who do we suppose were his converts? Dr. Lynn and Hope Hilton were the first LDS to suggest Lehi left converts in Arabia. During their studies on Lehi's trail, they discovered that a people by the name of the Lehianites came to power in northwest Arabia during the 6th century BC, perhaps as soon as 30 years after Lehi passed through that same area. Lehianite is a name that literally means the people of Lehi. The Hiltons wrote, quote, "The name Lehianites sounds like one of LDS invention. In addition, the discovery of a familiar temple worship cannot help but intrigue a Latter-day Saint. Since no one else can account for their origins, our theory is offered for consideration. They very well may be Arabs converted to the Israelite religion by Nephi." Unquote.
So, who were the Lehianites and where did they come from? Their capital city was the town of Dedan along the Frankincense Trail, and it would have been visited by Lehi. Now, Jewish historians believe that the Lehianites were Hebrews, the sons of Dedan, the grandson of Abraham. This theory was proven by Professor Michael MacDonald from Oxford University, who showed that the Lehianite language was exactly the same as the Dedanite language. In other words, the Lehianites were originally the Dedanites, except that around 500 BC they changed their name from Dedanites to the people of Lehi or Lehi. Of course, the question begs to be answered. Why would the proud people of Dedan change their name to the people of Lehi? It's an ancient tradition for Arab families or tribes to rename themselves after great leaders. For example, Saudi Arabia. The tribe that ruled Saudi Arabia did not always call themselves Saudis. They changed their name to Saudis after their great leader Saud about 300 years ago. We can take another example from the Book of Mormon. We notice that the people of Lehi, a portion of them changed their names to the Nephites in respect for their first great king, Nephi. Thus, wouldn't it make sense that if Lehi had converted many people in Arabia, that they would, in honor and respect for the patriarch, name themselves the people of Lehi?
The Lehianite place name does not appear randomly in Arabia, but only along the northern section of the incense trail Lehi took through Arabia, from the valley of Lemuel to Yabrith, now called Medina. With George's discovery of the valley of Lemuel, we know that Lehi stayed along the Red Sea's Gulf of Aqaba. The Gulf's original name was not Aqaba, it was Lehayan, or the Gulf of Lehi. Just to the east of the Gulf is Wadi Lehian. From the valley of Lemuel, Lehi would have taken the Gaza branch of the Incense Trail. The two branches of the trail converged at the ancient town of Dedan. Jeremiah, Ezekiel, and Daniel wrote of this town, and shortly after Lehi's passage through it, it became the capital of the Lehianite Empire. The merchants of Dedan catered to the caravans wending northwards with their supplies of incense and goods from the territories of the Queen of Sheba in the southern Arabian Peninsula. No one knows exactly when Dedan grew to become a center of culture and religion. We only know that it reached the height of its glory during the Lehianite influence over the area, which may have lasted several hundred years, from around 550 BC to 150 BC. The most recent archaeological work conducted in the area has shown that the Lehionite influence was even more widespread than previously thought. The main branch of the Frankincense Trail leaves Dedan to the southeast and 150 miles later arrives at the third linguistic footprint of Lehi, is the town of Al-Lehin. Al-Lehin is the plural form in Arabic of Lehi, L-I-H-I. Anyone who has lived, worked, and or traveled in Saudi Arabia knows that English transliterations of Arabic names undergoes significant changes from one English language map to another. In Arabic, consonant sounds take precedence over vowel sounds. This means Lehi, L-I-H-I, could be spelled any number of ways. L-E-H-I, or L-A-H-I, or L-I-Y-Y-A-H, or even L-H-Y. All of them would have been the same. In addition, the Arabic suffix ending sound, transliterated in English as AH or HA, and often YA, are interchangeable. AH is a suffix that indicates the feminine form of a noun when someone wants to name an area. So, for example, in Riyadh, Suleymaniha would mean the area of Suleiman or Solomon. Akrabiya means the area of the scorpions, since Akrabi means scorpion and Ya means area of. Using the Farsi engineering maps, Bruce Santucci discovered 4 other linguistic clues indicating that Lehi may have left his influence on the people in this area. First, about 18 miles north of Medina, Jabal al-Lihan, or the Mountain of Lihan. Second, about 15 to 20 miles south-southeast of Medina, deep into massive and desolate lava fields, where we find a hilly lava area the locals have been calling Hujayat al-Lihan. Thirdly, Bruce believes that Lehi might have temporarily left the Frankincense Trail to perform a pilgrimage to Mecca, as was commonly done at that time. While doing field studies for George, Bruce believes he found possible evidence for this. About 30 miles along what is today Highway 15, going to Mecca from Medina, skirting the massive lava fields, we suddenly find a turnoff trail called Shaib al-Lihan. From Mecca, the pilgrim trail would have returned Lehi to a south-southeast direction through the city of Taif. About 6 to 7 miles south of Taif is a small town named Ghazal. It is here where a wadi begins Bruce's 4th linguistic footprint of Lehi. The wadi is called Wadi Leah. Wadi Leah is a very long wadi that takes us back towards the main frankincense caravan route. 8 linguistic footprints of Lehi, all within Potter's proposed route, seems more than coincidental. Let's now consider the archaeological evidence that could connect the Lehianites to Prophet Lehi. We will start by considering the fact that the Lehianites appear to have used the names of the 3 righteous men who would have been adults by the time they were traveling in Arabia: Lehi, Nephi, and Sam. Obviously, the Lehianites used the name Lehi, which is found throughout the Lehianite inscriptions. In a tomb just 3 miles north of the ruins of the Lehianite capital, archaeologists found the inscription Nephi. A Lehianite inscription of Sam is found in the National Archaeology Museum in Riyadh and is also posted on the Smithsonian Institute website.
The name Sam is unique from its Hebrew counterpart, Samuel, or its Arabian counterpart, Sammy. Likewise, the Lehionite names Lehi and Nephi are uncommon in the Middle East, but they appear in the Book of Mormon and in the Lehionite inscriptions.
The sandstone cliffs of the Aula Valley was a perfect medium for the Lehionites to record their inscriptions. At the University of Oxford in the United Kingdom, there's a database that contains over 1,000 translations of those Lehionite inscriptions. In those inscriptions, the name Lehi or Lehi is found 25 times. The name Nephi or Nephi can be found 14 times, and the name Sam has been recorded 6 times.
There's a town in Arabia called Nephi or Nephi. Nephi is the way the name Nephi is pronounced in Arabic, other Semitic languages, and in the Latin languages. In his book, Lynn Hilton tells of a Saudi man he met who was from that town of Nephi in Arabia. While studying in the United States, the man drove through the state of Utah. When he saw the turnoff for Nephi, he took it and stopped in a restaurant. He asked a man, "What is the connection between the town of Nephi in Utah and my hometown, Nephi in Saudi Arabia?" The Utah man replied, quote, "Are you kidding?" End quote. One of my exploring companions, Jim Anderson, has lived in Arabia for 18 years and done much archaeological research during that time. He has another interesting story about the tribe of Nephi in Arabia.
Several years ago, my wife and I became interested to purchase a traditional Saudi jambia, or sword, as a souvenir. We inquired of several merchants in the city of Jeddah where we might find the highest quality swords. Jeddah is a major seaport in Saudi Arabia, located on the Red Sea and close to the Asir, or mountainous regions of southwestern Saudi Arabia. Now, the merchants told us that the best jambias, or swords, are made in 2 parts, the sheath and the metal blade, and each of these is made by separate Saudi tribe. Based on their recommendations, we ended up purchasing this particular jambia in Jeddah. The sheath is made by one of 2 tribes, the Bani Malik or the Bani Shahar. The top part of the sheath here is silver, and the bottom section is brass. The blade is made by a separate tribe, the tribe of Nephi. This tribe's name can also be pronounced Nephi. It is interesting to note from the Book of Mormon that Nephi brought the sword of Laban back with him from Jerusalem. Nephi describes the sword as being of very fine workmanship and uses it as an example for making other swords. Is it possible that there is some connection between the sword-making expertise of the Nephi or Nephi tribes of Saudi Arabia and the sword of Laban that Nephi of old carried?
Is there any archaeological evidence that the Lehionites practiced a faith familiar to what Lehi taught? Perhaps. We know that Lehi built an altar in the wilderness and another in the New World. Before Christ, sacrifice was a cardinal principle of Hebrew worship. During George's research on Noah's Ark, he met an elderly French explorer, author, and professional archaeology guide named Patrick Pierrard. He told George about a place he had visited with officials from the Saudi Department of Antiquities. They called the place the Lehionite Sanctuary, for it had been used to perform the sacred rites of animal sacrifice in the traditional Mosaic manner.
In April of 2005, Patrick agreed to show me the Lehionite Sanctuary. So I returned to D-Dan, this time with Dave Alexander and Jim Anderson. Patrick led us up a wadi that I had explored before, but I had not seen a Lehi sanctuary. Just following Patrick and David Alexander up the wadi here in search for the Lehi sanctuary. Just going up the canyon, we'll see an acacia tree.
Picked off by the camels.
There's the thorns on it. And these are the food of choice of any camel. They have this mouth that can allow them to eat these things. And we go on and on. Again, looking for the Lehi sanctuary here. We've been told it's a sacred place of the Lehi people. Hopefully we can find it before sunset. Okay. See him turning back into this little canyon here. Let's follow him. See, that canyon becomes a lot more interesting. This is a place I've really wanted to see for a long time. Since Patrick first told me about a year ago. So now this is becoming very interesting. Quite spectacular here. Is, I guess we're getting close to the sanctuary. I see that David and Patrick have stopped. Now they're headed into this very closed wadi here.
What?
I think Patrick's got something up here.
Yeah.
He wants us to photograph. Okay, we just got here just in time for Patrick. He says the last light of the day to film this. It's a beautiful place here.
Leila showed me her book about Petra, the high ground. And she showed me on the top of high ground, you have a round basin for collecting the blood of the goat. And the square hole is not a basin, as I was saying at the beginning. It's just a slot to bring bait hill. That means a stela representing God. And so it was a mobile representation of God put here in this lot at the period of worshipping. You have plenty of Dedanite writing around. You have one translated so-and-so, and he's singing slave so-and-so, thank God to Gaybat. So roughly you have 15 Dedanite graffiti and hundreds of Kufic Arabic. Kufic without dots.
Anyway, this is spectacular for me. This is something I wanted to see for a year since Patrick first told me about it. I just think this is a beautiful sanctuary and well worth a hike up here to find it.
The Hiltons suggested that the Lehianites had a familiar temple worship, at least a practice that would have evolved from one taught by Lehi. We know Lehi had officiated in the temple in Jerusalem, for he had the authority to build an altar in the valley of Lemuel, and again an altar once they arrived in the land of promise. Furthermore, Lehi must have given the keys to this work to Nephi, for his son constructed a Solomon-like temple in the New World. Without having received temple ordinance keys by those who had the authority in Jerusalem, Lehi and Nephi could not have legitimately built an altar or a temple. If Lehi had any part in the building of the Lehianite temple, he would first, in accordance with Mosaic law, have had to dedicate the place where the altar would be built, and given the place a name that represented God. This certainly appears to have been the case, since one name for the valley in which the temple is located is Al-Allah, meaning the high, while the current name of the valley is Al-Ula, which translates to the exalted place. Today, when the LDS build a temple, they are required to name each sacred edifice the house of the Lord. On closer examination of the name Al-Ula, we see that a secret is encoded within the name. According to the Saudi Ministry of Education, the word Al-Ula, quote, consists of the Arabic words Awala and Al-Qasr, which joined together to form Al-Ulia, end quote. Remember now, Ula means to exalt, but the two words that it was formed from are Awala, which means, quote, to make a promise before God, unquote, and Alcácer, which the Spanish word castle is derived from. And this means great palace in English. According to the LDS Bible Dictionary, the Hebrew word for temple is close to the English word for palace. Thus, when we decode the name Ula, the name of the valley the Lehianite temple is located in, it means in English, quote, the temple where one makes promises to God.
In our research in the Ula Valley, we found that inscriptions on the Lehianite temple, the Lehianite sanctuary, and all other Lehianite religious monuments in the valley state that they were dedicated to the god Dugebat. Indeed, the Lehianites worshipped only one god, and as the statue that was found of him buried in the Lehianite temple shows, he was in the form of a man.
But was this temple dedicated to Lehi's God? The greatest prophet of the Old Testament up to Lehi's time was Moses. Nephi was a great admirer of Moses and wrote twice about the great prophet on the golden plates. The temple rites of Lehi's era had been revealed by the Lord to Moses. We discovered that on one side of the Lehianite temple is the Arabic inscription that translates to Father of Moses. This seems to be confirmed by the Holy Quran that states that the Lehianites were descendants of the people of Thamud, a righteous people who believed in the one true God.
In the year 2004, the French explorer Patrick Priard discovered stairs at the base of a mountain on the opposite side of the valley from the Lehianite temple. Patrick realized that the stairs must lead somewhere, so he followed them, only to discover that within 100 yards they had completely eroded away. Patrick decided to climb the cliffs and to see where the stairs would have led. He was amazed at what he found. The following year, Patrick agreed to show me what he found. It would be only his fifth and final time to summit the sandstone cliffs. To reach the artifacts, we had to climb a cliff, the height of a 10-story building. The effort was worth it.
We have Jim now making his way up the second difficult area here.
Okay, you made the most.
Patrick guiding us up.
George and I, we are on the stairway now.
We're just about to reconnect with the Lehianite stairway here.
Unwilling people.
We found some stone staircases again now that lead up to the top of the mountain. Apparently at one time there was a stairwell that was carved all the way up to the top of this mountain, which is probably about 600 feet high above the floor of the valley.
Plenty of platforms, altars or base of house. It's very...
Yeah, you can see the seats, how they're carved in. Those are the box seats, skybox.
The box seats, sort of like an amphitheater up
I
here.
am puzzled by the black building over there. First,
Oh, I didn't even see that, yeah.
yes, but your best photograph will be over it because then you see the shape of the building. And if you can publish something, it's a good way to get reaction of specialists.
Here's a black building of some sorts here, way up high here in this amphitheater. You can see the way we had to come up here, how difficult it would have been. And then notice how far up we are above the valley floor here. Yeah, whatever this black building was, it's quite a large facility or edifice in its time. There's another rope over there Jim's alluding to, takes us up to the, I guess the upper amphitheater, as Patrick calls it. As you can see from Jim's trail here, this whole trail is just laden with pottery shards. We're continuing on up here. Patrick's taking us up to the area he calls the two cisterns. Patrick calls this area in here the two cisterns. So we have a cistern here for water, and then a cistern over here. This is here, it's an incense burner, and he made us think about all these stones that at one time constitute a building. Here we see the snake motif of the snake head here. This serpent is guarding the temple. Near the top of the mountain here, we came across these holes here. These are, Patrick says these are water reservoirs. They would bring water up in goat skins from the valley floor, which must have been a tremendous feat in itself, and stored it here. Plus there's a groove off to the side there where they collected rainwater. What we have here is the water reservoir that was used for the cleansing of the sacrifices. We then come over here and you see there's an altar piece of unhewn stones, which would be the appropriate altar for the Lehi. And then we have down here two holes, which our guide tells us were for the collecting of the blood. Notice this sanctuary is on the top of the mountain here, which is the perfect place for an altar in antiquity. Now this here, where we're looking at, are some columns, statues in the upper amphitheater. Up over here we have some statues, some amazing statues there. The Lehi. Then we have the upper amphitheater, as he's called it, or upper chamber of the sanctuary. Here are some Lehi columns down there. And then there's a drop off, and that took us down to where that black building was. Here we are in the upper sanctuary. An extension of this magnificent site. Here we find columns, many more altar stones, just more of just this vast complex that's overwhelming. Here we have Jim's pointing out a pedestal stone, a huge one, or base stone, Lehi writings on it. What this must have looked like when it was being used by the Lehi must have been something special.
Ibex, and here the horns are open, so I believe sacred cows or bulls.
To you an idea of the vastness of this place. Here we're just looking over a cliff.
Look at all the carved stairs all around this amphitheater.
Here's a statue that's kind of been thrown over. More carvings up here. We have walls up above here that were built on the very ridge, very top of these mountains. You come down here, you have stairs, you have altar stones, you have other objects that have been carved for some special purpose. This area here is just a tremendous archaeological treasure. It's going to take years and years to uncover and recreate just what this Lehi sanctuary was about. Here we have kind of an overview of the very top of this sanctuary here, top of the mountains, this high place. Here's this set of ruins, artifacts, just columns and statues and sacrificial altars. It's just everywhere you look. Here are more rooms and altars. It's just hard to imagine just how large this edifice once was here and how important this must have been to the Lehite people. Now across there is the side of the lower temple that has the cistern in it. Jim's taking some pictures of some Lehite script there all along the entire wall there. Dedicated. Here we have the bottom half of a Lehite statue. Just coming over here, some more base stones. More base stones over here. We come down here below us, we have another Lehite statue, about life size. More stones here. Here's another altar piece. Pat thinks it's a place where they burn the incense. Patrick here is trying to get us the writing on the base here. This is giving us the name of the sculptor who sculpted this for the god Tugebat. And here's the Lehite statue. And there's the bottom half of it. There's the chest and the face. And we have up. Patrick's just found the legs here.
Legs look the size of the statue.
Yeah. So there's actually quite a tall statue here at one time. Here's Patrick standing here at the now the very top of the sanctuary of this mountain. And you can see here, all down below here, this whole upper slopes of these sandstone cliffs are a massive sanctuary. Down below there's where we saw the statues. This is kind of like a room, a couple of rooms on top here, but definitely there was an altar up here with the altar piece here and with the more Lehite statues over there. Here comes some other interesting looking stones over here. They're at the top here, perhaps of some significance to us. But look at the location of this sanctuary here among the sandstone cliffs of Aula. A truly beautiful, beautiful valley and an incredibly interesting religious site here of the Lehite people.
Three of us.
Steps on the left, a nice step for your left foot. Oh, Father, okay, you make it like this.
The discovery of a second and larger Lehite temple showed us that the Lehites had established an important religious center in the centuries that preceded the birth of Christ.
The archaeological artifact that led the Hiltons to believe the Lehionite temple had familiar temple rites was the larger cistern found on the temple grounds. The Saudi Department of Antiquities does not know what the font's purpose was. However, it notes that it was, quote, near the foundations of a large temple. It is found a well-preserved large cistern, unquote. When George visited the temple in the year 2004, he found that the temple had been excavated. The dig revealed that the font was not buried near the temple, but that the font was actually buried against the temple walls, with stairs leading down into the font originating from inside of the temple. The Saudi ministry further noted that the floor of the cistern was buried beneath the surrounding surface of the ground. In other words, the font in the Ula temple was buried in a similar manner to the fonts in today's LDS temples. The Hilton's measurements were somehow different from those of the ministry, but they are close enough to draw a striking comparison between the Ula cistern and the great font that was part of Solomon's temple. The Hiltons noted that the width of the Lehionite temple is 4 meters, while the brazen sea of King Solomon's temple was 4.6 meters. The depth of the Lehionite temple was 2.15 meters, while the font in Jerusalem's temple was 2.3 meters deep.
There's yet one more surprise that the Wadi Ula is going to give to us. But to discover this, we have to walk down to the south end of the temple grounds to where they bury their dead in the lion tombs. Okay, we're now here at the lion tombs. Come with me, I want to show you something very special.
The Lehi's temple can reveal another secret to us, but to unlock this secret, we will need to travel to Spain. The ancestors of the people of this part of Arabia, which was once the Lehi's Empire, ruled Spain for over 700 years.
One purpose of temples is for doing work for the dead. Lehionite temple grounds include the Lehionite tombs, known as the tombs of the lions. 2 uniquely carved she-lions seem to be guardians of the tombs, and the lion, as we know, was the symbol of the house of Israel. When George saw the carved she-lions at the Lehionite temple tombs, he immediately knew he had seen them before, not in Arabia, but at a Moorish palace in Spain. The Arabs had built what George believes is the most beautiful of all palaces on earth, the Alhambra in Spain. Here in the Sierra Madre hills of southern Spain, the Arabs built a summer palace. The centerpiece of the palace is called the Court of the Lions. Any Latter-day Saint who has visited the Court of the Lions must agree with the description of the court that is found in The History of the Arab Peoples by author and Arabist Albert Hourani. He states that the Court of the Lions has Solomonic associations. Indeed, here at Alhambra are the very she-lion motifs found at the Lehionite temple, this time not guarding the dead, but instead 12 lions supporting a font on their backs. A verse in the Book of Jeremiah might be puzzling to a student of the Old Testament. In the passage, the prophet prophesies of the last days and the coming of the Lord, not to Jerusalem or to the New World, but to Dedan, the site of the Lehionite temple, a small desert outpost surrounded by thousands of square miles of desert. Quote, "Flee ye, turn back, dwell deep, O inhabitants of Dedan, for I, the Lord, will bring the calamity of Esau upon him, the time that I will visit him." Unquote.
Why would the Lord visit Dedan in the last days if it were not to redeem his temple? And if that is the case, then who built that temple, if not the people of Lehi? Discover more about the Book of Mormon through science and exploration by subscribing to this channel. You can also visit our website, christinperu.com. On the website, you can find information about our annual Book of Mormon tour to Peru, where I'll be your guide. Thank you.